do happen. So today, before the cabinet meeting, I want to thank the clerk of the House and the jams do happen. So today, before the cabinet meeting, I want to thank the clerk of the House and the parliamentary staff. They conducted an orientation session for all MPs and senators. That lasted from 9 a.m., started 9 a.m., finished at 1 p.m. It was very useful, especially for the new parliamentarians, both from the Senate and those in the House of Representatives. I will share with you some of the areas we discussed in Cabinet, and then, of course, we'll take your questions. Some members have joined me, so they are also open to questions. We dealt with and approved the issuance under an order under Section 88D of the Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Amendment Act to suspend the application of the demerit point system. So yes, we've made the pronouncement, but we have to take the legal measures to make it happen. So we will be issuing that order in due course as it was approved by the Cabinet today. Today we also approved further details about the Ministry of Education's July-August 2025 Vacation School Repair Program for schools and other facilities under the Ministry of Education. We approved at Cabinet amendments to be made to the Income Tax Act, Chapter 7501, to establish regulations for the procedure of the BIR and other matters related to the functioning of the BIR. As you know, we have taken steps to abolish the TTRA, and we indicated that we will strengthen the BIR, and so we'll have to make some amendments to the Income Tax Act to give effect to regulations to get better management, better efficiency in the functioning of the BIR. Of course, they also need more staff, and those are matters that are proceeding. We approved today two things that should have been done long ago, and these have to do with suitable scanners at our ports. So we approved, Minister of Works and Infrastructure brought a note for the approval of a non-intrusive inspection scanner by the point leasers, Flipdeco, and this other one was to invite tenders by the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago to supply, install, and commission 2 non-intrusive inspection cabinet X-ray pallet scanners for that port. Now, we've seen in the media a lot being made by the Venezuelans, making accusations against Trinidad and Tobago. My minister is here with us. Minister, yes, is here, and he will take up further questions on it. With respect to a paramilitary group entering Venezuela from Trinidad, I say categorically we have no evidence to validate this at this point. I saw also in today's paper where the Venezuelan Justice Minister claimed that the Trinidadian Kendall Geron was supposedly captured in this group. Again, we have seen no evidence to support the comments from these Venezuelan officials. Now, Mr. Cabello said something, it was quoted in The Guardian. Yes, I do read The Guardian, guys. Quoted in The Guardian, where he vowed to pursue anyone attempting to destabilize Venezuela, and I quote his words as reported. There must be justice. We are going we are going after the gangs wherever they are. I repeat, there must be justice. We are going after the gangs wherever they are. Today I want to make it very clear to the Venezuelan government and officials that they can do whatever they want on Venezuelan territory, but they cannot come here. TNT territory is off limits to them. If Mr. Cabello's comments are a veiled threat to enter TNT territory, they should reconsider any such intention. The fact is that as a responsible government, we have to take all threats against any incursion into our territory seriously. I will speak to Minister of Defense and Attorney General to seek advice on protections for our Coast Guard, to use deadly force on any unidentified vessel entering TT waters from Venezuela, smuggling military able-bodied men and women. TNT is off limits to them. Following comments from Maduro and Cabellos, we now have to take seriously the threat by that government sending their agents into our country to commit acts that can be adverse to our own welfare. We will also have to take a look at how we go forward with Venezuelan migrants here who are military aged and able-bodied men and women. We have to take this threat seriously now. They have done this before. They made similar propaganda comments about Guyana and Colombia whenever they had interior political problems or elections, and then they engaged in border skirmishes with violence. We will take these threats very seriously. I want to tell further TNT drug and human traffickers, smugglers, who are masquerading as fishermen. If you enter Venice waters to do your illegal acts and you're caught by Venice authorities, you are on your own. I repeat, you are on your own. No amount of family crying on Ian's programs will cause us to intervene. Mr. Cabello also alleged U.S. involvement, again throwing out the tired old bogey of blame the Yankees, and he also condemned treatment of Venice abroad who have fled their homeland. Now they have started with TNT. Mr. Cabello should ask himself why Venice are fleeing Venezuela in the first place. Why are they fleeing? Is it because of behavior of their own government? I say further, no amount of rhetoric from the Maduro government will drive any wedge between this UNC-led government and the US government. We stand solidly with the American government on the issues concerning Venezuela. That will not change. We want no part of the Venezuelan government's interior political gimmickry. We are peaceful neighbors. Let us leave it at that. School violence, another issue yet again. Reports that a Form 5 student, Southeast Port of Spain Secondary School, is currently warded at the hospital after being viciously attacked by schoolmates in a planned and filmed assault. It is reported that the incident occurred on Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025, inside the school's bathroom. The teenager suffered a fractured nose, a broken tooth, blood clots in the eyes, and other injuries to her body during the brutal beating. Video footage of the incident shows the three girls concerning cornering and ambushing the victim in what appears to have been a premeditated attack. Several other female students were seen recording the incident, and instead of stepping in to help, they were busy filming. As the beating concluded, one of the attackers delivered 2 forceful kicks to the victim's face, leaving her bleeding from the nose. Clumps of her hair were seen scattered on the floor as she lay injured on the ground. Other students eventually carried the battered girl out of the washroom. On Wednesday, June 4th, the 3 suspects and their parents were summoned to a meeting at the school. All 3 girls are now facing suspension. Now, I will speak to the minister after we get a full report. I think everybody's fed up with the daily dose of school violence. You send your children to school and you want them to be safe. I think everyone is fed up with violence taking place in our schools. Going forward, we will treat every occurrence of assault or battery as an expellable offense in schools and an arrestable offense to put before the courts. I want parents and students to listen very carefully. If your child batters another child, assaults or batters another child in school, they will be expelled and will face the full brunt of the law. They will be arrested. Let us carefully listen. I'm not saying that they will be suspended, but it will become an expellable offense. My Minister of Defense has advised me whilst at the same time that this may be happening, that we will have to find some kind of spaces in which these children can be properly counseled and nurtured. But they cannot remain in our schools and be a danger to all the others, the majority of students who are well-behaved. We have to protect those well-behaved students from the few who will engage in assault and battery in our schools. And, you know, if someone is 15 years old, if that person robs you or assaults you or extorts you, they are arrested. However, if they do the same thing in a school uniform, they are getting a free pass. It doesn't make sense that the school uniform is a license to break the law. This must stop. All acts of school violence must now be referred to the police for criminal prosecutions. Parents need to take responsibility for their children's behavior. And if they can't train them to properly behave in school, then let them stay home, and then we will have to look for spaces, as I said, to properly nurture them and counsel them and to help them to live in a manageable way. If any parent or student assaults or threatens a principal or a teacher, that child will be expelled. Assault, threats, battery. The child will be facing expellable charges. We are fed up of seeing our principals and teachers abused and threatened by both students and the parents of some students. We will enforce expulsion rules to the maximum. Additionally, all students caught in videos cheering and clapping and egging on the violence will be suspended because they are also participants. It is a time that every act of school violence, it is a time now where every act of school violence be reported to the police and that participants, as I say, face expulsion and prosecution in the courts. I am urging all principals, teachers and students to make reports to the police and forward the reports to your MPs if you see no action being taken. I turn now to stand your ground laws. I think the ongoing debate on this is very, very healthy. On stand your ground law, it helps people to understand the issues. However, we will go through with stand your ground laws as we promised in our campaign. We will do it. Ask yourselves this: why should you have to retreat in your own home? So that's the old law, you retreat. Why should you have to retreat in your own home when you and your family are being threatened? Why should you have to decide between defending your family or not defending your family because you're fearful that you will be prosecuted later? There are frivolous arguments about aiming for the criminal's foot and hand and leg and whatever it may be. That is unrealistic in home invasion situations because you're already so terrified that you will be such a marksman that you could aim for the two. So we will bring the stand your ground laws to defend yourself and your families. I say to citizens, stand your ground legislation is passed. If criminals invade your home, stand your ground for your loved ones. Do not hesitate. Send them straight out to the hospital. Drug and human trafficking, a few words on this before I give to my ministers. Drug and human trafficking is on the increase along the southern and southwest areas of our country. There's an increase in female traffickers, drug and human trafficking. Let me be clear. Some Venezuelan women are main persons who run the human trafficking rings. Members of the Venezuelan committee are also escorting Trinidadian gang members from Trinidad to traverse across Venezuela and then enter into Colombia to do direct illegal business with cocaine producers. Some Trinidadian gangs are now cutting out the middlemen. They're going straight to Colombian producers, facilitated by those in Venezuela who are being welcomed into this country. A lot of Venezuelans identifying the drug trafficking and human trafficking have registration documents, so they are here apparently legally. Clearly, they have duped the system. We are working on a migrant plan to be rolled out in the coming months. I warned you all before the elections I said, if you do illegal activity in TNT, you will be sent back. And yet the crime involving Venice continues to increase. In the interim, I'm advising Venezuelan migrants who are here, if you wish, you should begin to return to your country. Faris Arawi, the chief representative of the 1% Eater Food in the PNM, Faris Arawi, was reported in the newspaper, Firestorm, usual alarmist way, reported in the papers as saying to expect 6 months of terror and warned of firings in CPEP and URP and so on. He conveniently did not say what they did in the month before and even after the election. I will let MP Saddam Hussein and MP Padarat speak to these matters. These are all my comments for the moment. I thank you for your attention. And Minister Sturge, if you would like to add to what I've said about the reports from Venezuela, please, if you can come.
Yes, good afternoon. When we received the reports yesterday, I spoke with the Chief of Defense Staff, Vice Marshal Daryl Daniel, and he gave me the assurance that the radars did not pick up any such activity, and that quite apart from the radars, there was no evidence to substantiate the claims made by the Venezuelan government at this time. We will continue to see whether we can either substantiate the claims made, or if we would at some point be in a position to refute them with certainty. As of now, we understand that they've provided a name of who they claim is a Trinidadian national. They've not been good enough just yet to provide any sort of pictures or evidence to substantiate their claim. We await that, and when that information comes, we'll treat with it in the appropriate way. Any questions?
How serious is the threat on Venezuela?
Well, how serious we are taking the threat?
Very serious.
Well, it's a threat that has to be taken very seriously, given the dynamics, the geopolitics where we find ourselves, particularly given our proximity to Venezuela and who Venezuela has chosen to align themselves with. So that it is a threat that it may be a casus belli, as they say, for something else. So we have to take all threats seriously.
Have you had any direct contact with President Maduro or anyone from his administration?
The Spanish I know is from Duolingo, so that would not have been possible. But no, we have not. Minister Sovas did in fact reach out to our people in Venezuela, our own officials, to try to, in essence, speak with the Venezuelan authorities. And all we have shared with you is what we have thus far. So yes, we did reach out.
But not directly?
Not directly.
I mean, for something that you're saying and taking seriously, why no direct attempt to speak with?
Okay, draw attention on the
Yeah. Listen, we are waiting for confirmation of this. What we've had so far is very little from the Venezuelan government. So once they deal with us directly and say this is the position and they give us something formally, then we'll investigate it.
You spoke earlier about looking at Venezuelans here who are of military age. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Well, military age, as I understand it, would be 18.
Are you sending them back?
That would be a consideration if they run afoul of the law, but they'll have to be monitored because there are many Venezuelans who came here. We are not certain as to their background, whether they were in gangs, anything like that. So we have to be a little more circumspect with respect to those who are coming, and we have to ramp up the monitoring of those who are already here. And once we have information that would put us in a place to determine whether they should be returned, then they will be returned.
Will this impact migrant children from Venezuela being able to attend school here?
That is something we have to discuss because I learned yesterday that there are still about 7,000 migrants here. Once we know how many school children are there, among them, then we'll have to make some sort of decision as to how we place them in schools, to integrate them. And if their families are returning, then that's a decision for the families whether they wish their offspring to remain here or whether they wish to take them with them.
Just for clarity, I mean, it's sounding like as if this government and the Venezuelan government has a fractious relationship at this time. Is it that we don't have an open dialogue with them? You can't speak with them directly?
From my understanding, I'll say we, on our end, we do not have any sort of fractious relationship. But they've said what they've said, they've made claims, and at some point, once it's verified, we'll know how to treat with it. First of all, diplomatically, and thereafter, we'll see how it develops, and then where we go from there.
Is this the end of the legal migration policy that's been around since 2019?
That is something we have to discuss. Sorry, my lady.
I said we can develop my
Yes.
And, well, that question was my next one. Is the new migration policy now going to be a deportation policy, similar to what our friends in the U.S. are doing?
No, listen, the laws as they exist, if you run afoul of the law and the law puts measures in place for you to be deported, then we'll follow the law. If you break the law and you have to be deported, we'll deport you. Thus far, the discussion is we still have to have some discussions with all of the stakeholders to see how we can absorb who we can absorb. And once we have that discussion, we'll tell you in due course.
Do you have an idea of how many Venezuelans are currently in the country?
What I was informed, it's about 7,000, that most of them who came, most of them returned.
And what does this mean for the Venezuelan registration program that was in place before?
Well, I'm told that we start over the process of registration. So we do intend to look at that. We may have to re-register because the re-registration would, in essence, involve a more in-depth process where we will seek to get more information about them and seek to verify it so that we'll know who we have here and know what decisions we should make with respect to them.
Would the Trinidad and Tobago government be inviting the U.S. military or the U.S. government to send any military assistance as a preemptive measure for any possible potential incursion from Venezuela?
That is premature, and that may never happen. So we don't want to speculate.
Is it a consideration?
If it's a consideration, at this stage, there's no reason for us to go down that road.
Minister, you mentioned that the Chief of Defense Staff said your radar didn't pick up anything. Are you sure this radar is working? Because thousands and thousands of illegal Venezuelans have come through. So how is it that your radar didn't work before to detect all these illegal immigrants coming in?
I can give you the assurance that the radar is working. When I came in, I did an audit. We know where there are blind spots, not many, and there's a backup system so that we get feeds from other countries, assistance from other countries. So yes, I believe CDS Daniel would have been relying on what was working, and if something was not working, I'm sure he would have said so.
And at a very time frame, you all did a search, a few days ago, or when was this done?
We did a time frame for the relevant period under consideration.
And fishermen, should we be concerned about fishing, that we're not very farming? What is your advice to them?
My advice to them at this stage is you fish in your own waters and you don't venture out, because any number can play at this stage. The fractious relationship did not start with us, and there's nothing negative coming from our side. So, but if there's something negative coming from their side, then you have to exercise caution. That's common sense for them, I think.
You are on your own to the fishermen masquerading. Sorry, yeah, they said the men who are masquerading as fishermen. Exactly how do we plan to prove that they are actually drug people masquerading as?
Well, you can first of all look at all of the cases that passed through the courts over the years, that many people who claim to be fishermen turn out to have been masquerading as fishermen, and they ended up being convicted of trafficking cocaine, importing cocaine. That still goes on. You'll see videos from time to time. I'm sure. I think up to 2 years ago we saw a video with fishermen who were missing, and we ended up seeing their bodies dismembered in videos shared on WhatsApp. I don't think they'll dismember you for fishing.
In Trinidad and Tobago right now.
There's supposed to be one, yes.
Any attempt to speak with the Venezuelan ambassador here?
I'll have to ask Minister Sobers. Yes, Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Are we going to have beefed up security at the coast given this threat? Like, are we going to have more vessels patrolling?
We do have what I think is sufficient security with the help of our partners. 1 minute, please. Yes, we do have some measure of security, which we believe is adequate. If the need arises and it needs to be increased, we'll do so with the help of our partners.
Any evidence that they are here? The Trende Aroga gang?
I would say yes, there is some evidence.
Like what? Share that with us?
There are a few members here. I know that based on my previous incarnation as a criminal defense attorney, so I would say yes.
With the help of our partners, are you talking about the regional security apparatus or U.S. partners?
I'm talking about all of our partners.
Tobago fishermen have been complaining bitterly about Venezuelans in the water. Are you aware of this and any plans to address it?
As MP for Toco Sandy Grande, I did see 2 or 3 vessels on the coast when I was there a few weeks ago, and I made inquiries, and I was told that we need not be concerned about them. They are not fishing vessels, but they are not here for illegal purposes.
What I think I can take about 7,000, is it that these people have registered at the ministry? Because it doesn't seem that way when you go around the country.
It seems more. You've done a head count, or?
Well, the question is the same for you. Did you do the head count? Because you
No, I obviously cannot do a head count. We'll have a census at some point soon, and then in that census we'll be able to pick up who are nationals and who are not. But the 7,000 came from one of the reps of the Venezuelan community. I think it's Sophia Figure. I can't remember the name offhand. I'll give it to you at the end of the or during the postcard.
Mr. Sturge, switching gears a bit, the Prime Minister spoke about how students who are found, who assault other students or batter other students, that they'll be expelled. And she said there's some other way will have to be found to deal with them in terms of counseling. Is the MyLAT program an option? Is that where we're
That is one of the options, and we'll make it. We'll seek to make it mandatory, and we have the constitutional majority to do so. So that if you commit an offence, there's evidence, and you are charged with a criminal offence, particularly offences of violence, then we'll seek to make it mandatory that you have attendance there, because the danger is if you simply suspend them and they are not attending school, then they'll be seeking community elsewhere.
This is actually a thing that the former Minister of Education did announce, that every expelled student will go into the MyLAT once they were, I think, under the age of 16. So it is something that's going on. But I guess my real question is that really fair to a school fight? I'm sure you got into a fight in school. I'm sure every one of us in here got into a fight in school in some way. Criminal, please. But criminal charges at a very young age has the ability to ruin someone's life. Do you think that is very harsh, especially if somebody was being bullied, they're defending themselves, the video doesn't always show the whole picture? Is that fair to someone at teenage years to have their life criminal for a fight in school?
I think if you look at the video, and if you have evidence and you are convicted in a court, then the court will determine what is fair. We are not determining what is fair. What we are saying is there are 2 sides to the story. One, And two, we appreciate that whilst you should be punished or removed for the safety of other children so that you don't continue to bully others, we also have to take into account that if we simply remove you and you are not attending school, you may end up in a gang. And we are seeking to try to mitigate against that so that we'll take that into account to try to protect you from yourself.
But you can end up in a gang if you were held for whatever charge and you're held in remand. Where else are you going to join a gang?
Sorry?
You can join a gang if you're held in remand, if they end up in prison.
Well, the way the children's courts work, I don't know if you are aware, children are not remanded into custody. What happens is you appear before the court and you appear with your parent or both parents if that's possible, and then you are remanded into the care of your parent.
Any consideration into possibly drafting legislation to charge the parents of those children instead?
That is a possibility we would look at, and going back to what your friend from TV6 said about Myla.
CNC3.
He's not your friend.
A while now.
You all are both what? Both CNC3.
And Guardian newspaper.
I thought he was TV6, sorry. Yes. Whilst there may have been a policy in place in terms of mileage and so on, what we are seeking to do is put laws in place so that we treat with certain things, and there's a particular program in place so that in the interim, the courts, in essence, would have a place to send you to so that you in essence, have programs that attend to your schooling will continue, but there'll be other programs where we can challenge your negative energy and make it into positive energy.
You're looking to implement this before the start of the next school year?
We hope to, but it is something that has to be discussed with all of the stakeholders, including the judiciary.
Prime Minister, is it possible to ask you a couple of questions?
I can do it then. There are two other ministers.
Oh, you want?
Can they just speak, please?
Yeah?
Three.
Oh, yes, three.
Good evening, members of the media. Thank you very much, Prime Minister. The Prime Minister ended her presentation by indicating that Minister Al-Rawi, former Minister Al-Rawi, former Attorney General, former member for Sanford and the West, thank you for reminding me, has indicated that he is crying doom and gloom with respect to certain programs such as CPEP and so on. There's one particular program called the National Reforestation and Watershed Rehabilitation Program that now falls under the Ministry of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries. And this program was established really for environmental rehabilitation in terms of the forestry division and parts of the agricultural extension services. Currently, when we were briefed by the program and the CEO of the RDC, where the program was previously under, was with Mr. Al-Rawi under the Ministry of Local Government. Under this new government, it has moved to the Ministry of Agriculture, as I said. We are informed that the total number of approved contractors for long-term are 80 contractors, and the contracts are usually 3 years long. The total number of approved contractors for short-term was 64, and those are 3-month contracts. And the total number of active contractors, according to their information, is 127, and there are other types of contractors. What was very interesting is that when we were briefed, we were given a list of contracts which spanned several pages, amounting to 127 contracts, and of 73 of the long-term 3-year contracts. Those contracts were entered to on the 25th of April 2025. The 25th of April 2025 was the Friday right before the general election. I'm informed that there was a flurry of activities taking place at the RDC for contracts to be entered into on the eve of a general election. And while some contracts were dated the 25th of April 2025, I'm also informed that some of those contracts were signed on the day of the election. And this is what we have discovered so far at the ministry. And when you look at the sample of the contract, it means that every contractor will be paid a fortnightly contract sum of $45,756. This fortnightly. This was used as a machinery for electioneering and mobilizing for the election day defeat. And we are further informed that these contracts were assigned to various constituencies, in particular the marginal constituencies across Trinidad. What was also very surprising is this. There's a program director at the National Reforestation and Watershed Rehabilitation Program, and her contract was in fact allegedly renewed on the 25th of April 2025. And when I saw a copy of the contract, there was two documents, two contracts, or two letters of offer. One, the CEO did not place his signature on the document, but the program director did in fact place her signature on the document. That was one contract for renewal. On the second contract for the renewal, the CEO affixed his signature to the document. The program director did not affix a signature to the document, but a witness signed indicating that she saw the program director signing the document. And there was no signature. So these are very serious matters that we have now discovered at this particular program. So at the Ministry of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries, we are conducting several other reviews of those contracts that were awarded, and in particular the hiring practices that were taking place under this particular program. So, and I must say that the expenditure is that they were allocated $80 million for this particular program in this current fiscal year of 2025. So these are some of the very brief points I wish to raise with you with respect to what was taking place on the eve of a general election by the last PNM government. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Saddam Hussein. Honorable Prime Minister, colleagues, members of the media, I want to encourage my colleagues who are now in the opposition, particularly the former member for San Fernando West, who is now an opposition senator, to stop seeking their own interest and start seeking the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. For the past 10 years, we were regaled of stories, many of which were a conjured up figment of people's imagination. But MP Saddam Hussein has shared with you some factual information as it relates to reforestation. Today I wish to share some factual information as it relates to CPEP. Being the new line minister for CPEP, CPEP was previously under the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. Having had CPEP now reassigned to the Ministry of Public Utilities, I had the opportunity to meet with the management of CPEP to get some information with respect to what is the financial standing of the company, whether or not the company has been meeting its mandate, because for quite a while it appeared as though CPEP was a runaway horse. And similarly, like reforestation, what we have found is that it was utilized as a playground for PNM politicians, for those PNM party hats, those who sought the benefits of the state as opposed to looking after the interests of the state. Today I want to be able to share with you several things as it relates to CPEP and the reason why former minister and former MP is crying wolf. In local parlance, we say they take front before front take them. And I want to explain that with former minister and former MP Al-Rawi. Similarly to what occurred in the reforestation program, we discovered that over 360 CPEP contracts were renewed for a period of 3 years during the period April 14th to April 24th, 2025. When asked about this, I was advised by the management of CPEP that there was no cabinet approval for this. We searched, there's no cabinet note. Instead, the management of CPEP was advised first that it did require cabinet approval. I sought an intervention from the Minister of Local Government and Rural Development as it relates to the possibility of whether or not that note existed. She informed me that the staff at the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development has advised her that when that proposal was brought, the management, through the technocrats, the permanent secretary, and others, refused to put into effect existing contracts getting an extension for a period of 3 years by the former administration. They refused to carry out that on the eve of a general election. CPEP is a multi-million-dollar company. The contractors there ballooned from when we left office to 360 at present day. And many of whom, when I panned the list of contractors, out of 350 contracts that were awarded, over 275 of those contracts functioned and operated out of P&M-held constituencies. That's over 50%, close to 75%, interestingly, of all CPEP contracts that were awarded during the past 10 years operated, functioned out of P&M-held constituencies. That's the first point. The second issue has to do with the selection and the criteria of how one became a CPEP contractor. So the management also shared with me that ministers will call up, never mind they never turned up at CPEP, in terms of who will become a CPEP contractor. There was no transparency in the process. Instead, it was utilized as a party system that was available for rewarding the P&M boys and girls. And that is why I started off by telling you that former Minister Al-Rawi took front before front took him. Because they used that program in a way that it escalated and ballooned into the figures that we are seeing here. MP Saddam spoke to you about the monthly bill of the reforestation program. I can tell you as well that CPEP contractors, some of them received in excess of, in many instances, 2 to 3 gangs. Those are the terminology that they use at CPEP in terms of operating as contractors of the program that saw returns of $40,000 and $50,000 monthly. So you can understand why the feeding at the trough and the curtailing of that feeding of the trough now with the P&M out of office causes former Minister Al-Rawi a lot of pain. I want to raise another issue that may cause another former minister a lot of pain as it relates to CPEP. And as we flesh out a lot of what we have discovered, even though we have promised to fix the challenges that we have met at many of these state enterprises and in ministries, I think it is incumbent on us as representatives of the government to tell the population where all of this money has gone. The claims of waste, mismanagement, and corruption under the People's National Movement is real. At CPEP, a building was rented along the east-west corridor to move CPEP from where they function out of St. Madeleine, along the corridor. The building was rented for a period of 3 years in the first instance. Now, I've put a stop to it because there's no contractual arrangements anymore. The lease has expired. But to the cost of taxpayers for 3 years, at a cost of over $3.5 million, the relatives of a former senior minister of the People's National Movement received the lease and the contractual arrangements benefiting directly while that building was never occupied for the 3-year period that it was leased for. You understand that, Trinidad and Tobago? So when the Minister Al-Rawi, former minister, comes to cry doom and gloom as the member for Barataria San Juan has indicated, he understands why. Because they sought to enrich themselves, their friends, their financiers, and their families at the expense of the people of Trinidad and Tobago at a time when Trinidadians, many of whom could not identify where they were getting the next meal from, the symbol of the 1% was ensuring that those within the cabinet, and we spoke about the cabinet recusals and the familial benefits many of them enjoyed. And as we go into the mid-year review, I'm almost certain colleagues across the length and breadth of the government services through ministries, state enterprises, etc., will share more as to why former ministers like Al-Rawi and others are claiming doom and gloom, but while some of them are having severe heartburn, heart palpitations, we may see them complaining a lot more when more is revealed, because it is not just a simple matter of a few millions here and a few millions there. To them, that was chicken feed. But when we start to share with the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago why you can't get drains, why you can't get roads, why you suffered for the past 10 years, your children can't get laptops, it is because of the waste, corruption, and mismanagement of the People's National Movement in areas like reforestation, CPEP, and others, where they sought their own interests as opposed to the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So I think that adequately puts into context where we are with respect to CPEP, that those contracts, in our respectful view, should have had cabinet approval. It should have been a review process, because many of those contracts were not even up for expiration. The expiration of those contracts would have been 1 or 2 years ago. The real reason was to protect the friends, family, and financiers of the People's National Movement, to ensure that if they were out of government, which they are now out of government, that they continued to feed at the trough of the purse of the national economy while Trinidadians continued to suffer. And therefore, the position that we have taken is to do an audit of all CPEP assets at this point in time, to review all vehicles, equipment, and rental facilities of CPEP that the former administration got themselves into, but also to review the program as a whole in terms of keeping with its mandate, and also the process in terms of what I articulated in how these contracts were renewed for a further period of 3 years without any sort of evaluation being done. I thank you.
A pleasant good evening to members of the media and fellow citizens of our country. I just have a simple update for everyone, mostly our senior citizens. Today, I am pleased to report on a critical development that underscores this government's unwavering commitment to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, particularly our senior citizens and the most vulnerable. Over the past month, the Ministry of the People, Social Development and Family Services has been spearheading a coordinated cross-agency effort to aggressively address the backlog in the processing of the senior citizens' pension and other key social welfare grants. As promised last week at our postcard, yesterday a meeting was convened at the ministry's headquarters on St. Vincent Street, bringing together the Honorable Roger Alexander, Minister of Homeland Security, members of the NIB, members of the Immigration Office, and permanent secretaries, particularly of the Finance Ministry, or technical and administrative leadership at the Ministry of the People as well. I want to share with you that this collaboration among these entities has yielded measurable results in just a few short weeks. I want to share the facts with you. As a direct result of this effort, the NIBTT has drastically reduced the number of outstanding information requests from a total of 6,461, inclusive of 2,300 senior citizens' pension queries, which I shared with you last week, to just 175 across all benefit categories as of June 4th, 2025. I want to share that this achievement is not one that is coincidental, but it is the result of deliberate action and effective governance by your government of Trinidad and Tobago. I also want to take the opportunity to thank my cabinet colleagues and members of the 3 ministries who would have participated in this exercise. And most importantly, this evening I say thank you to the citizens for your continued patience. Just bear with us a bit again. We still have to work on immigration. We will work on that as soon as possible, but we will update you as we go on. We have just turned a corner, but under your Prime Minister and government, we will ensure that we fix this for you together. So thanks a lot. That's the latest update.
Minister Mohit, just how did they process 2,300 applications and bring it down to 100? Why was that process so fast? I mean that seems to be amazing. I mean, what were the issues that was a result so?
Following our postcard briefing last week, during the weekend, the NIB and myself and my ministry, we worked informally. NIB would have brought out staff over the weekend and worked through the weekend to ensure that by Monday, 2 p.m., the Ministry of the People had a report, and this was the report we received. Yesterday we met, and we are working on other issues, but this is tremendous, and I'm very happy to report this to our citizens.
Mr. Hussain and Minister Padarat, Minister Hussain, if a program director signs off on something, but the CEO does not, right? And if cabinet approves some CPR contracts, does not approve CPR contracts, but yet they are given, so is somebody liable in law? You know, can fraud charges something be laid against some people? I mean, what is the process now?
As a lawyer, we don't advise ourselves. So on matters of these, we will seek advice. But on the face of it, one has to ask the question, who offered the contract to the person? Because there's no signature affixed to that document. So who offered it? And that's a very important question that we have to ask.
Minister Padarat just now mentioned, I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer the question, but you mentioned just now about the friends and family of the PNM feeding and the trough, etc. In the past, we've been told that, listen, the friends and families of MPs and ministers, they're private citizens, they could feel free to bid on whatever contract they want. Madam Prime Minister, is it that you've instructed your MPs and your ministers that their friends and family are not allowed to bid on projects in other ministries?
It's a free country. Yeah, go ahead.
So have your ministers been instructed that their friends and family are not allowed to similarly feed at
Well, I think the minister was talking about the CPEP contracts, and people don't bid for those. I don't know how, that's a process we're also trying to audit. How did they get them? With other contracts, people it's a free country, as I just said, from across, you bid.
As I have here, Madam Prime Minister.
But I frown on it very highly. For ministers, yes, for ministers coming to my cabinet to accuse themselves.
Is it that you don't want them to recuse themselves, or you don't have
I
to be
said
in a position
I will not tolerate ministers coming 171 times to recuse themselves from our cabinet meeting. Yeah, that's not what we signed up for.
As we're here, we're talking about boards. I guess you can ask about the CPEP board if there's a new one. But I did really have a question about Angostura. And I was wondering, why was there this urgency to have the full board of Angostura removed? And what are your comments on the kind of cyberbullying and doxing that went on to get them out of there by one of your ministers as well?
Sure. That's about 3 questions in one. Let me see if I could take them in seriatim. Why the rush to get them out? Why the rush for them to stay? Why did they want to stay? So I told you, and the law, we'll come to the law, that's the other aspect. Last week I made the point that the people were reluctant to send in their resignations. We said that they should do the right thing and do so. They all then decided, first, today they were not doing it. And the next day I saw it reported, they went block in some cases. There is a process in law, and we'll follow the law in appointing the new boards. I think today we did Karen Airlines and a couple others. So there's a process, we are within that process, and we will follow the law.
But the doxing and the cyberbullying that went into it, and like I said, by one of your ministers, no less.
You may have to ask him.
Well, I ask you because 2 weeks ago when Dr. Munilal was here, you said you told your ministers to stay in their lanes.
In their zone, yes.
Yes.
In their section, stay in your section.
Right, stay in your section. Minister Arnold Roberts is the minister in the Ministry of Housing. Arnold Roberts is the minister in the Ministry of Housing. That has nothing to do with Angus Tura as far as I'm concerned, and a lot of his videos have been pertaining to that. So how do you approve of that sort of behavior from your ministers?
That's a trap question.
How
If
so?
I say yes, if I say no, I'm in a trap there. Of course, ministers have their own voices. From time to time, we'll have to call them in and say, Radiant, stay in your section. It happens.
Did it happen in this case?
What happened? I didn't cyberbully anybody, you know, sir. I
We didn't
came
say
here
you,
last
we didn't
week,
say you. We didn't say you.
and I said clearly last week, if you don't go, I will use the law and I'll use the process.
A lot of people think that it was not necessary for Angus Tura, especially if I have to go, because the government is not the majority stakeholder. There's some continuity. Why the urgency to get rid of Angus Tura, especially the full board?
And also, just from what I understand.
No, wait. Every one of those persons are political appointees. They are not. Did not bid. They did not apply. They are appointed by the political directorate. When that directorate changes, they change.
So, from what I understand, Madam Prime Minister, in making my own inquiries generally, companies that are publicly listed, there is some difficulty with the entire board resigning because it triggers a process including
In
an
my
EGM,
respectful view,
etc.
there is no difficulty. In the same way that these things created, there were problems, they were not going, they should go, they must not go, they must stay. There is no problem. We will follow the law and put the boards in place.
Well, you find yourself in a situation now where you have a publicly listed company with nobody at the helm of the company.
And what
in
will
terms
happen?
Of
What do you think will happen? We will put a board, we will have a management team. And then you have the lower level functionaries operating as well. You have other persons. But the important point here, these persons were political appointees. They were handpicked by the Cabinet of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. There is a new Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago.
But legally, they have to report to the SEC, don't they?
Yes, they have to report to the SEC.
If they all resign and there's no board of Angus Tura, what does that do for
So if they don't report today, what happens? What will prevent them from reporting tomorrow? We will put the boards in place. We will fix it. We will fix it. I guarantee you that.
You mentioned the Caribbean Airlines board a minute ago. Can you just clarify what you said there?
I said we approved that board today, Caribbean Airlines. There are a lot of problems at Caribbean Airlines, money-wise. Caribbean Airlines sent us 20 pages. Well, don't kill me if it was 19, but many pages of things they say you must pay this now, or Caribbean Airlines will go into blacklist, the airline will collapse, it wouldn't fall. One of the items I could just remember off my head was uniforms. And there were many others like that. So it was jumbie in the government. If you do not pay this money, and it's zillions we are talking about, the airline will collapse. So we had to go through the fine-tooth comb, and see which ones that were absolutely essential. I said in a lot of problems, otherwise. Caribbean Airlines took a loan, what was it, 260 million, a loan that has been rolling over year after year after year. Today we had to again agree to roll over this loan. Not a cent has been paid back on that loan. Caribbean Airlines is in the red, but every time they speak, they're talking about the great gains they're making, how much profit they're making. None of that is true. These boards have to go. They have to go. How many years they did not file financial accounts? You don't even know what is a true financial account. You have failed to file audited financial statements. I gave you the amount of years they had failed for. So yes, a new board was approved today by the Cabinet.
Who's the chair of the board?
I can't recall what we do, 90 notes a day.
Anybody remember? We have a few. No?
I can't.
All right, well, I don't know. We have a few of them.
I had a piece of paper with me. I brought the piece of paper as I did last week. It's on my desk, but it's not here. Okay, so Caribbean Airlines was appointed today. We looked at another one, TNTech, but we did not confirm the TNTech board.
I just want to ask you very quickly about Stand Your Ground. I was doing some research,
Yes.
Google search now and there, and I saw that in 2023, your current House Speaker,
Yeah.
speaking as an attorney back then, he said that what Stand Your Ground proposes is already covered in laws surrounding self-defense. He said, and I quote, "It must not be forgotten that the common law of self-defense already offers the same degree of protection to persons and homeowners than a separate Stand Your Ground legislative provision would provide. In short, there is no need for new legislation."
Okay. As Saddam said, as lawyers, we do not advise ourselves, but in my respectful view, that is a wrong interpretation of the law from coming back from the common law. One of the things that that common law has, which will not be, or which will be strengthened, what it says is you do the retreat first. We are saying no, a man is in your house, your wife is threatened, your child is threatened, no. You do what you have to do to defend your family. So that will be a major change from the common law doctrine.
Well, he actually said in the article that...
I'm sorry?
He actually said in the article that existing laws do not say that you need to retreat first if it's in fact self-defense.
We may have a different view. Lawyers always have different views.
Right.
So you may ask him on what basis he did so at that time. Saddam has remind me what was said. Go ahead.
If you read the article carefully enough, you would realize that what the author was saying is that the common law defense of self-defense, because it's not in statute, we rely on common law, judge-made law, precedent, cases, it really reflects that the law is not certain. What we are doing as a government is putting certainty with respect to the law of self-defense, which is what we're calling stand your ground law. So if you read the article properly, you'll realize that the author is given an analysis that is not in line with what you are asking. What you're asking is whether or not we are diametrically opposed to the positions. He didn't come to a conclusion that says, well, look, the law provides for stand your ground. He's saying that the current status of the law is that there's use of proportionality, and as the Prime Minister said, retreat. We are saying we're putting the law within the box of four corners so that if somebody invades your home, you don't have to interpret while they have a gun at your head. What is proportional? What we are saying is that you can use the force to destabilize that person to protect yourself, your property, and your family. It's very clear what we're doing.
I read it properly, but thanks for the clarity. I just want to ask one more thing. You mentioned the report that you ordered into the so-called Forex cartel. When can we expect that?
That is one, like a bed of thorns or pulling teeth. You know, there's a case in court that I think we may have to pursue at this end, that the central bank governor refuses to divulge information. And therefore, this is the same central bank governor who, on two occasions, I'm segueing way out to another point about him. On two occasions, with two successive Auditor General's reports, has failed to provide information to the Auditor General. So remember last year when we had the 2.3 billion missing, it was because the central bank did not release information or allow the auditor to get the accounts to do her work. It's happened again. The Auditor General's report, which will be laid shortly in the Parliament, it has happened again. Now, why did I go off into that? Because that's worrying me. Yes, to disclose information, and that's the blocker that we are getting, the failure to disclose information using certain provisions of the law, saying they don't have a duty, they are not under any obligation to disclose information. That's why we are getting some difficulty at the moment. So I'll be very honest with you with that.
Just quickly, before I pass it on, from Forex cartel to Vibes cartel.
I'm sorry, from
Forex cartel to Vibes cartel. I know that your Minister of Finance said that he will look into how the organizers for the One Caribbean Music Festival was able to get their hands on almost $1 million to pay a DJ Pound. I mean, that raises some significant questions with respect to which financial institution even facilitated such a transaction. Did it concern you as well?
Of course it concerned me. How it is we can't get Forex to buy medicines, to buy other things, and you're getting all this money? How? On what grounds? People running a little business can't get money to buy things in their businesses. So yes, the minister did not give me a report when we met today at the cabinet level, so I'm sorry I cannot answer as to what his report may have or his investigation may have shown up. We'll face the same problems. if the central bank refuses to give us the data.
Minister, good evening. Just back to the Caribbean Airlines issue, will you consider, whether will there be a revision of
Board is on my desk.
possibly another airline servicing the domestic bridge for Caribbean Airlines instead of Caribbean Airlines?
Please ask again.
Whether there will be a revisit of another airline besides CAL operating on the domestic air bridge?
I have not given that thought at this point in time. Is there a reason you want another airline? No,
Well,
I'm not being facetious, please.
Yes, that's fine. The THA has been clamoring for expansion of the domestic air bridge for a long time. That might alleviate that issue.
We had some very good discussions with them, I did mention last week, and we spoke at depth of ways in which we can improve the service on the air bridge in terms of the change of hours of the flights. I remember last time we were there, we had later flights. So if you come to Trinidad and the time passes now, you're stranded. So we talked about times for increasing the number of flights during special occasions, Easter and whenever, when you have the festivals there or when the carnival is coming up. So we did have some good discussions, which but at this point in time, we've signed a lot of air services agreements with many countries. I mentioned some of them last week. We have approved those to be signed. For the air services agreements, and hopefully through some of those, we may have some linkages with other airlines. But at this point in time, there is no intention to replace Caribbean Airlines.
One more question, please. What do you think about Attorney Martin George, the head of the Tobago Chamber, has called for the reopening of a Ministry of Tobago Affairs?
A Ministry of what?
Tobago Affairs.
Apparently, the people we are in communication with in Tobago are not in favor of a Ministry of Tobago Affairs. What we have in place is certain areas relevant to Tobago is under the office of the Prime Minister, and there's a proposal to have a liaison officer, a special liaison officer out of Tobago to work with the office of the Prime Minister and to work out of CAST in Tobago. But the places we are talking with the political majority in Tobago is not in favor of a Minister of Tobago Affairs. The names of what? The liaison officer?
Who might have suggested that they're not in favor?
I said the majority of the politicians who have been elected by the people of Tobago. Yes. The THA officials. Okay, thank you. I see you coming to Trinidad regularly. Okay.
Having broached the issue of Forex, having regard to the fact that CL financial liquidators continue to receive payments of fees in scarce foreign currency in excess of, from what I understand, $24 million and counting, which is being expatriated out of the country. Now that the entities are on solid footing and are no longer deemed to be in the red, no pun intended there, does the government intend to return CL Financial and CLICO to its rightful owners in keeping with the shareholders agreement?
We have not had that discussion yet.
And a follow-up question, in light of the eventual resignations of directors on the Angostura board, has the government consulted or engaged with the CL Financial shareholders with respect to appointment of new directors at Angostura and by extension CLICO and perhaps HCL boards?
Yeah, I think the Minister of Finance is in talks with the various stakeholders of those entities.
Right. One quick question, otherwise CPEP, wasn't it supposed to be a transitional arrangement where startup contractors, they will get involved in CPEP and then they graduate onwards rather than these contracts being perpetually renewed? 1, 2, and would the minister be at liberty to state who is the former minister in whose property is being rented by CPEP that was not used in the East-West corridor?
I think Minister Padarat can better answer those.
First of all, I started off by saying that CPEP is a runaway horse because I'm quite familiar with when CPEP was first started, what was the mandate for CPEP. You would recall in our last incarnation in government, we had CPEP Social, CPEP Health, CPEP was also assisting in the HDC. So therefore, we utilized that as a transition, and you could have seen the clear evidence of that during the last administration where we were in government. With respect to the second question, I would say stay tuned. More will be coming on that.
The WASA board is a member of the SALCOT on that raising issues of conflicts of interest. How do you respond?
Can you say where and who has raised that conflict of interest?
One of the members of the WASA board an employee of the SALCOT?
I'm advised that the person is an ex-employee of the SALCOT.
And we've confirmed that they have no ties to it at all.
As I've said, I'm told that the person is an ex-employee of the SALCOT.
But if they were employed, it would be a conflict of interest.
As I said, the person is an ex-employee of the SALCOT. Unless we can substantiate otherwise, then we'll take steps to deal with that.
Prime Minister Sonala, TDT News. Just in terms of the scanners, I know you would have mentioned it earlier. Could you say at this point in time how much scanners are working? And with regard to the actual procurement of the scanners,
Mr. John
how long, I know it's
Mr. John is here.
that takes a while. Yeah, how long are the scanners expected to arrive once procurement takes place?
There are 11 sheds down at the wharf there. And since 2023, they were asked to purchase these new scanners because the Comptroller of Customs said she was not seeing properly into those, the barrels. And in light of that, she also said that the illegal guns and drugs were coming into our legal ports. So she had to balance border security against the ease of doing business. So she had to take action. And so she would have indicated in 2023, they didn't bother with that. No, 7 of the 11 shed owners, they did buy the scanners, 4 didn't. Of that 4, 50%, meaning the Deco Port and the Port of Port-of-Spain, did not purchase their scanners. So your question is, how soon? It will take, the whole procurement mechanism will take 31 weeks, or about 7 months.
Just finally from me, Prime Minister, I'm not sure if this would have been discussed at cabinet level yet, but it's been a while we haven't heard any update on the merit list with regards to police commissioner. Is there any updates at all?
Say that again, please. The merit list.
Merit list. Is there any merit list? Any updates on the merit list?
I have not seen one. I have not seen any.
Madam Prime Minister, either you or probably Mr. Hussein. The media was taken on a quite lovely tour yesterday around Shagaramas by Gary Abood and Fishermen and Friends of the Sea, where we saw numerous derelict boats just there abandoned off Point Good, and also the issue of showed us a boat, a fishing boat,
Some really horrible pictures. I saw them.
Yes, filled with oil. So, 2 things coming out of that. One, are you able to say if there's any consideration being given to strengthening the environmental laws that will, govern those things? 1 and 2. In terms of getting rid of all these abandoned boats that is just an eyesore there. I'm not sure if Minister Hussein might be able to address that.
Well, before Minister speaks, today marks week 5, is it? And certainly we are looking at dealing with those environmental issues. We have started consideration of the board, the EMA board, and officials to go into there, but certainly something we'll have to address in due course. It won't be something that will happen tomorrow or next week.
In terms of the laws that might govern those that issue the derelict boats?
Yeah. Currently at the Ministry of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries, we are looking closely at what we call the Fisheries Management Bill. You would remember that particular bill was brought and placed in a JSC. There was never a final report of that bill. There are several stakeholder the bill lapsed, yes. There are several stakeholder comments that we are looking at in order to tailor the bill. We have to pass that particular piece of legislation, and that will also strengthen the registration of vessels for fisher folks and so on. So it will also give benefits towards the fishing community. So we're trying to look at the bill in a holistic manner, and it will also assist in preventing matters such as these and the easy identification of vessels.
One of the boards that seem to still be in place is the TTT board, Trinidad and Tobago Television. Can the government state what action it intends to take, if any, with respect to any possible willful dereliction of fiduciary duty by the board of directors at TTT in approving political broadcast by a particular political party whereby blighs have reportedly been extended with the absence of invoiced payments made to the state media company?
Well, we've been receiving several reports of that, and we've been getting reports of the same blights that you're talking about and whatever is happening. That board will be put in soon. With respect to the Caribbean Airlines board, the chairman is Reina Kaulesa. Law. Yeah. Yes. R-E-Y-N-E. Reina Kaulesa, chair. Videsh Prayam, vice chairman, finance. Darren Ali, director. He's an auditor. Lauren Pert, director, and Selvin Kujo, director.
Any thoughts on the TTCB board and all the drama that's been surrounding the cricket board? Trying to do cricket board. Any thoughts on
Yeah, I get somebody into cricket. Whilst we're on sports, I encourage everyone to please come out on Friday and support Team Trinidad and Tobago for the football match that is taking place at the stadium. Let's give our boys a good send-off as they start their way towards the World Cup that is coming up. Cricket board, you're asking me about?
Yeah, but the UNHCR, they just sent out a tweet saying that they will be closing in July because of cuts from, I guess, the U.S. administration. That leaves the refugees who would come here without, I guess, a place to go. How is that going to factor into your migration policy that you spoke about?
Well, now they've just told me about it. We will insert it into whatever discussions we are having on that migration policy. I wasn't aware of the tweet you just received. It will certainly have to figure in, you know. Can we say good night? Thank you all very much. Make sure and go to football tomorrow, please. Team TNT. I'm trying my
This is TTT.